She was just a maid. Mistress laughed. But on the court, everything changed. Why did the whole room suddenly go silent? Find out in this video. Subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The scent of lemon polish clung to her fingers long after she set the cloth down. It was embedded in her skin now, like the memory of everything she had tried to forget. The wood floors glowed in the morning light pouring through the cathedral windows of the Gentry estate, an expansive, glass-wrapped mansion nestled in the rolling suburbs north of Chicago. Jasmine Miller knelt by the baseboards, scrubbing silently, her eyes fixed on a persistent smudge as if it were a personal affront. It was 6:17 a.m. She'd been up since 5, not because she had to, but because after years of working in other people's homes, her body obeyed habit more than alarm clocks. By the time the Gentrys stirred from their million thread-count sheets, she'd already vacuumed the downstairs, steamed the windows, folded 2 loads of laundry, and brewed the specific Guatemalan roast Mrs. Melissa Gentry insisted on having ready by 7 sharp. Jasmine's own breakfast was a heel of bread eaten standing at the sink, with water straight from the faucet. No coffee for her. Every drop had to be accounted for. She moved from the living room to the sunroom, the cleaner trailing behind her like a shadow, and her thoughts drifted as they often did. To a different floor beneath her knees, a different house years ago, a smaller home, modest and noisy, where a girl practiced her swings in the hallway, knocking picture frames off the wall while her mother shouted, "Careful with your auntie's vase." That girl had believed she was meant for greatness. That girl thought the world would one day chant her name across a stadium. Jasmine stood and stretched, her back creaking slightly. 30 didn't sound old until you realized you'd spent the last 12 years cleaning toilets with a college application still buried in a drawer somewhere. She used to carry a tennis ball in her coat pocket. A little ritual, touch it before every shift like a promise. Now she didn't even know where it was. The house around her gleamed, a pristine showroom of affluence and sterility. Paintings lined the hallway, none of which she was allowed to touch. Even the air felt curated. She moved with a practiced discretion, never too loud, never too present. Mrs. Gentry appeared at the top of the stairs like a marble statue. Blonde hair perfectly curled, silk robe trailing behind her. Jasmine lowered her gaze out of habit. "There's a smudge on the glass near the breakfast nook," Melissa said, not looking directly at her. "I'd like it taken care of before the guests arrive." "Yes, ma'am." "And please," she added, pausing, "don't use that vinegar cleaner again. It smells common." Jasmine bit back a response, gave a quiet nod, and turned toward the kitchen. Common. The word lodged itself under her ribs. She should be used to it by now, the tone, the implication, the constant reminder that she did not belong. The day passed in a blur of commands and silence. Fetch this, polish that, wash, fold, repeat. At 4 p.m., the landscapers arrived, blowing leaves around the grounds like a storm. Jasmine took the opportunity to slip outside for a breath of air that didn't taste like bleach. She wandered toward the back of the property, where the hedges framed a wide clearing. It was a space she'd passed by dozens of times, but never approached. Not her place, not her world. But today something tugged at her, a feeling without name. The hedges parted to reveal it fully. A tennis court. It was immaculate. Clay, not grass. White boundary lines razor sharp, nets pulled tight. The sun hit the surface at a perfect slant, casting long shadows. For a moment, she stood there frozen, staring at it like it was a ghost or a mirror. Something inside her shifted. She stepped closer, gravel crunching beneath her shoes. Her hands trembled slightly. She reached the edge of the court and stopped, afraid to go further, as though crossing that invisible line would undo the last decade of her life. She was a maid now. Maids didn't belong on tennis courts, but the court didn't care. It simply waited. That night, long after the guests had gone, after Melissa had locked herself in her room with a glass of wine and her husband had disappeared upstairs to his study, Jasmine found herself wandering back outside. The wind had picked up, cool against her skin. The court shimmered under the moonlight. She hesitated for only a second this time. There was a storage box near the bench. Inside, 2 rackets, a canister of balls neatly sealed. She pulled one out. It hissed open with a sharp pop. The smell hit her instantly. Rubber, pressure, memory. Her first grip on the handle was awkward, foreign. She tested the weight, adjusted her fingers into the old familiar hold. Her body remembered what her mind tried to forget. She bounced the ball once, twice. It leapt with a lightness that startled her. The first serve was clumsy, the second better. By the third, something awoke in her. Her arm extended in rhythm, her torso twisted with force. She grunted, launched the ball, and it soared over the net with precision that made her gasp. The sound of impact, the thwack of strings Meaden felt, rang like an echo of another life. She didn't notice the man watching her from the balcony. Thomas Gentry leaned over the railing, eyes squinting against the night, his hand shaking slightly as he clutched the banister. His memory was a sieve these days, names and faces slipping through like water. But when he saw that woman swing, something clicked into place. He didn't know her name, but he recognized that serve. Jasmine hit ball after ball, lost in motion. Her feet remembered to slide, her hips to pivot, her wrist to snap. She wasn't cleaning floors anymore. She was chasing ghosts, proving to herself that some parts of you don't die. They just wait. Eventually, her arms gave out. She dropped the racket beside her, breathless, sweat slicking her forehead. She sat on the edge of the court, legs folded, staring up at the stars. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was full of something electric. Behind her, the sliding door creaked. Jasmine jumped, turning sharply. The old man stood there in a robe and slippers, his eyes glassy but alert. "You held the racket wrong," he said, voice rasping like gravel. She blinked. "Excuse me? You're turning your wrist too early. You lose power that way." "I'm sorry, I didn't mean—" He raised a hand. "Don't apologize. That serve, it was clean, but sloppy at the wrist." She stood awkwardly. "I'll leave. I just needed—" "Who taught you to serve?" "Myself and my mom. She wasn't a pro or anything, but she tried." He took a few slow steps onto the court, eyes never leaving her. "What's your name?" "Jasmine." "I'm Tom," he said, "or I used to be. People mostly ignore me now." She didn't know what to say. "You've got potential," he added. "It's in your shoulders, your follow-through. That's not something you fake." Jasmine swallowed. "It's been a long time." "I can tell, but your body remembers. That's what counts." He turned slowly and shuffled back toward the house. Jasmine remained there, stunned. "Be back tomorrow," he called over his shoulder, almost like a whisper. And then he was gone. Jasmine stood there in the dark, heart pounding. A single sentence hung in the air, heavier than anything she'd carried all day. Be back tomorrow. She looked at the racket in her hand, then up at the moonlit sky. Something impossible pressed against her chest, like hope. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel common. She felt seen. She felt called. And she would return. Jasmine arrived at the court the next morning before the sun had fully crested the tree line, its early light painting the clay surface in soft golden hues. The world was still asleep, except for the wind threading through the hedges and the steady thump of her heart. She carried the same racket from the night before, her grip more confident now, though the edge of disbelief still clung to her like morning dew. It had felt like a dream. The old man with watery eyes and a voice like weathered stone, calling her back to the court as if summoning some dormant version of herself. Perhaps she had imagined it. But as she stepped through the open gate and onto the court, the figure waiting on the bench proved her wrong. Tom sat hunched over, elbows resting on his knees, a cap pulled low over his thinning white hair. A duffel bag lay at his feet, unzipped to reveal neatly folded towels, bottled water, a can of fresh balls, and, oddly, a pair of vintage wristbands. "You're late," he said, not looking at her. "It's 6:12, she replied, surprised by her own voice. "That's 12 minutes you could have been warming up." She smiled despite herself and approached. He motioned to the baseline. "Show me your forehand. Don't think, just hit. I want to see what your body remembers." She positioned herself, inhaled, and began. For the next 20 minutes, the court echoed with the rhythm of repetition. Ball after ball, Tom fed them to her with a calculated slowness, watching like a hawk, muttering under his breath. Jasmine's movements were rough at first, inconsistent, but then the old instincts kicked in. Her feet shifted automatically. Her hips turned in sync with her arms. She wasn't thinking anymore. She was moving. "Stop," Tom said suddenly. She froze mid-swing. "You're opening your shoulders too early. That's where your power's leaking." Jasmine nodded, panting slightly. Sweat beaded at her temples, and the morning chill had already begun to fade. Tom walked over to her, surprisingly agile for someone his age. He placed his gnarled hands on her upper arms, gently rotating her stance. "Here, locked. Elbow soft, shoulder steady. Let your body coil, like this." He moved her arm back slowly, demonstrating the arc. "When you uncoil, it should be like a spring snapping, controlled, sharp." Jasmine followed the motion, felt the resistance, and then swung. The ball cracked against the far line, sending a puff of clay into the air. Tom's eyes gleamed. "Better." She laughed breathlessly. "It's like my muscles forgot how good this used to feel. They don't forget, they just wait for you to remember." They practiced for another hour. Tom never smiled, but his voice grew more animated, more precise. He wasn't just watching her play, he was seeing through her, dissecting every movement, rebuilding her piece by piece. Jasmine couldn't remember the last time someone had paid that much attention to her performance, much less offered feedback that wasn't a complaint. Afterwards, they sat on the bench sipping water. Jasmine's shirt clung to her back. Her arms trembled with fatigue, but it was a good ache, the kind that meant something had been earned. "You used to coach?" she asked. Tom took a long breath, eyes distant. "I trained junior circuits, state level, a few college prospects, before I got forgotten." She waited, sensing the weight behind his words. "My daughter, Melissa, she thinks I'm just a piece of antique furniture now, a burden to wheel out for holidays. I keep myself quiet, mostly. Easier that way." Jasmine didn't know what to say. She could relate to invisibility, but not his kind, the slow erasure by time and blood. "I used to believe in fire," Tom continued, "and watching a kid hit that perfect shot and knowing they had something no coach could teach. I saw it once in a kid from Indiana, another time in a girl from Georgia, and I saw it again last night." Jasmine blinked. Me? You've got that spring in your motion. You hit like someone with something to prove, and you don't flinch when you miss. That matters." She looked down, unsure how to receive a compliment she hadn't heard in over a decade. "You ever play competitively?" "Once. Local tournaments. Nothing serious. I was supposed to get a scholarship, but life." He nodded as if that explained everything. "Life's rude like that," he said, "has a way of interrupting your swing." They lapsed into silence. Eventually, Jasmine stood. "I have to go. Mrs. Gentry'll be up soon." Tom nodded. "Same time tomorrow." She hesitated. "I don't want to get you in trouble." "I don't take orders anymore, and neither should you, not out here." That made her smile. She turned to leave. "Jasmine." She looked back. "Bring sneakers tomorrow. Your footwork needs work." The next morning, and the next after that, they met on the court. Tom arrived earlier each time, sometimes already warmed up. Jasmine brought old sneakers she dug out of a box under her bed, worn at the soles but still usable. The days blurred into a rhythm of serves, volleys, and corrections. Tom drilled her on footwork, breathing, and mental discipline. "You play the point before it happens," he'd say. "Don't react, dictate." Her arms ached constantly, her hands blistered. She developed calluses and an instinct to tighten her core during every backhand. She changed her eating habits, cut out sugar, added protein, drank more water. She moved through the Gentry house during the day with a stiffness that earned her odd glances from Melissa, but no one asked. She was still invisible, only now she had a secret, a living, breathing secret. One afternoon, nearly 3 weeks in, Tom surprised her. "You ever hit a slice under pressure?" She frowned. "Not in a long time." "Then let's test you." He gestured toward a bucket of balls and motioned for her to serve. The drill was relentless. He fed her fast, erratic balls, one to her feet, one high and wide, one low and slicing toward the net. Jasmine scrambled, sweat dripping into her eyes. Her legs burned. Her chest heaved. She missed 2 in a row. "Reset," he barked. "I can't." "You can." Another ball. She pivoted, swung low, and cut the air with a slice that grazed just above the net and kissed the far corner of the court. She dropped her racket and sank to the ground, laughing and gasping at once. Tom approached, his face unreadable. "Do you want to keep playing housemaid?" he asked quietly. "Or do you want to be a player again?" The question hit her like a serve to the chest. "I don't know if it's even possible." Wrong answer. The only thing between you and the court is whether you believe you belong there. She stared at the court, at the ghost of herself she kept finding here, again and again. "I don't have money, no gear, no sponsor. I'm 30. That's ancient." He crouched down, looked her in the eyes. "You've got drive, fire, heart. That's what scouts look for. I can't promise you victory, but I can promise you a chance." She swallowed hard. Her throat was dry, but her eyes shimmered. "You're serious? I'm old, not senile. There's an amateur league holding trials next month. A friend of mine still runs their selection. I'll make a call, but only if you're ready." Jasmine stared at the racket beside her, the grip molded to her hand after weeks of effort. "I'll be ready." Tom stood with difficulty, nodding. "We start doubles next week, and no more late-night snacks. I can see it in your foot speed." She laughed, wiping her face with the hem of her shirt, and for the first time in years she didn't feel like someone cleaning up other people's dreams. She felt like someone chasing her own. By the 4th week, Jasmine could predict the pattern of aches in her body the way some women track the moon. Her hamstrings screamed every morning, her shoulders pulsed with dull soreness, and her palms had developed calluses so thick she no longer felt the sting of the racket's grip. Each new day came with new stiffness, but also with a deep, rhythmic certainty. Her body was waking up. Slowly, painfully, but undeniably. Tom's training had grown more intense. The old man, despite his trembling hands and slowed walk, transformed on the court into someone sharp, deliberate, and demanding. He pushed her like he would any promising junior, barking instructions, correcting posture, swatting away excuses. "You don't breathe when you swing," he told her one morning. "You hold it in like you're afraid of your own force." "I am," she admitted, standing at the baseline, her chest heaving. "Then you're not ready. The court knows when you lie." He wasn't always gentle. In fact, he rarely was. But Jasmine didn't need gentle. She needed honest. And in Tom's rough-edged coaching, she found clarity, an unexpected kind of care. He was the first person in years who expected more from her than silence, obedience, or invisibility. He saw past the uniform, past the years of scrubbing toilets and folding sheets, to the girl who used to dream with a racket in hand. During her breaks at work, Jasmine stopped taking naps in the utility closet. Instead, she stretched quietly near the laundry room, shifting her weight from foot to foot, rotating her wrists. She began watching old matches on her phone. Venus, Serena, Osaka, studying every serve, every stance, every comeback. Her meals changed too. No more leftover pastries from the gentry brunches, no more sweet tea, just water, eggs, oatmeal. She couldn't afford a nutritionist, but she could listen to her body. It was speaking more clearly now. Still, it wasn't easy. Not physically, not mentally. One evening, after a particularly brutal session of footwork drills, Jasmine limped back to her small basement room behind the pantry. She collapsed on her mattress, biting her lip to hold back tears. Her whole body throbbed. Her knees felt like they belonged to someone 20 years older. She curled around the pain, doubting everything. "This is stupid," she told herself. "You're 30. You clean other people's floors. No one is waiting for you on a tennis court." But then she remembered the way the ball sounded when it caught the sweet spot of the racket. That single, crisp note that erased the world for half a second. The look on Tom's face the first time she landed a corner serve. The way she stood a little taller each morning, despite the pain. She got up and opened her drawer. Inside, buried beneath old utility bills and a faded photograph of her mother, was a small dented tennis ball. She picked it up and squeezed it in her palm, felt the fuzz, the pressure, the promise. She fell asleep with it in her hand. The next day, Tom introduced a new element. Strategy. "You're not playing fetch. You're playing chess," he said, tapping a finger against his temple. "You control the ball. You control your opponent. Think ahead." They practiced placement, cross-court forehands, deep baseline rallies, drop shots. At first, Jasmine's head spun with the pace of it. Tom fed her ball after ball, faster than before, forcing her to move, to anticipate. "You're late," he barked. "I'm trying." "Don't try. Decide. You hesitate, you lose." She gritted her teeth, chased the next ball, planted her feet, and slammed it down the sideline with a grunt. Tom raised an eyebrow. "Better?" During one of their water breaks, Jasmine sat on the bench, arms draped over her knees, sweat soaking through her shirt. Her heart pounded in her ears. "I haven't felt this alive in years," she said. Tom sipped his water, watching her. "You stopped too soon," he said. You gave up before the story got good." "I didn't give up," she said, defensive. "Didn't say you did, but life threw a damn heavy serve at you, and instead of swinging back, you ducked." She looked away. "I didn't have a choice." "You always have a choice, just not always a fair one." Jasmine didn't reply, but she thought about it for the rest of the day. Later that evening, while folding bedsheets in the master bedroom, Jasmine overheard Melissa on the phone in the adjoining office. Her voice carried through the slightly ajar door. "She's been limping lately," Melissa said. "I think she's hiding something. No, I haven't asked. I don't want drama. Just find me someone new. Quiet, reliable." Jasmine stood frozen, a bedsheet clenched in her hands. Replaceable. Of course. It wasn't the first time. She'd been hired and fired more times than she could count. A missed call, a scuffed vise, a perceived tone, and it was over. But this time the insult burned deeper, not because she was losing a job, but because this time she had something to fight for. She went to the court that night and trained until her legs trembled and her vision blurred. She didn't tell Tom. She didn't need encouragement. She needed control. She needed to earn the right to say no. 2 mornings later, Tom gave her a surprise. "We're doing a full match." Jasmine blinked. "A match?" "You versus me. 3 sets, real scoring." "I can't." "You can. We need to see where you're weak." She agreed, nervous, unsure, but ready. They played. It was clumsy at first. She overhit, she rushed, she second-guessed. Tom, even slower and older, beat her in the first set without much effort. But in the second, something shifted. She stopped reacting and started planning. She found his weakness, his left corner, and aimed ruthlessly. She won the set. The third was brutal. Every point a war of will. Tom gasped for breath between rallies, his knees wobbling, but he didn't relent. Jasmine fought through the burn in her thighs, through the stinging blisters, through the voice in her head, whispering she didn't belong here. She won. 7-5. Tom collapsed onto the bench, laughing breathlessly. "You're a goddamn fighter," he said. "You're not fast. You're not young. But you've got something better." "What's that?" "Refusal." She sat beside him, light-headed and drenched in sweat. "Refusal to lose. Refusal to accept what people think you are. You're not a maid, Jasmine. You're a player." She stared at him, unsure if she wanted to cry or scream or laugh. Tom leaned forward, his voice low. "There's an open tryout in 3 weeks, local amateur league. They take 5 women every season. Scouts come, coaches, even sponsors." Jasmine blinked. "I know someone who runs it," he added. "I can get you in." She looked down at her trembling hands. She had no real gear, no money, no support system. But she had this court. She had Tom. And she had fire in her lungs. "Are you sure I'm ready?" "No," he said, "but I'm sure you need to find out." And with that, a new chapter began. Not just in her training, but in her identity. No longer a woman remembering who she used to be. Now, she was becoming someone new. Jasmine had become a master of invisibility long before she stepped foot into the Gentry estate. But the more she trained, the more she changed, the harder it became to remain unseen. Her body, once quiet and compliant, now hummed with vitality, and no amount of practiced humility could dim the fire in her eyes. She moved differently, not just on the court, but everywhere. Her steps had weight. Her spine had purpose. And the world, especially the people who believed they owned it, started to notice. Melissa Gentry was the first. It began with small things. A raised eyebrow when Jasmine walked past with a spring in her step. A longer pause before issuing commands. Then came the questions. "Are you getting enough sleep, Jasmine? Is everything all right at home? You look different. Jasmine answered them all the same way, with a smile and a nod. It was safer that way. But then came the day she was caught. It was a Thursday morning, humid and gray. Jasmine had risen early to train before her shift like she always did. She had just finished a set of volleys with Tom and was toweling the sweat from her neck when she heard the voice that turned her blood cold. "What the hell is going on here?" Melissa stood at the edge of the court, arms crossed, sunglasses perched like daggers on her nose. She was flanked by her friend Darcy, another wealthy woman with too much time and too little warmth. Both wore matching expressions of disgusted amusement. Tom, who hadn't heard her approach, turned slowly. "Melissa," he said, voice calm, "you're up early." "What is she doing on my court?" Melissa snapped, pointing at Jasmine. "With my equipment?" Jasmine froze. Her instincts screamed at her to run, to apologize, to vanish, but she didn't move. She tightened her grip on the towel instead. "She's training," Tom said simply. Melissa scoffed. "Training for what? The Maid Olympics?" Darcy chuckled. Jasmine flinched. "She's a tennis player," Tom continued, his voice firm now, "and a damn good one. I've been coaching her." Melissa looked from her father to Jasmine, her face a mask of disdain. "You've been coaching the help? On my property?" "I've been using my court," Tom corrected, "and my time." "This is outrageous," Melissa snapped. "Jasmine, you're paid to clean, not to prance around pretending you're Serena Williams." Jasmine felt the heat rise in her throat, but she kept her voice even. "I always finish my work. I've never neglected my duties." Melissa took a step closer, lowering her voice to a hiss. "You think just because you hit a few balls you're one of us? You'll never be anything more than a glorified housekeeper with a hobby." The words hit like a slap, not because they were new, but because this time they came with venom meant to wound. Tom stepped between them. "That's enough." Melissa's eyes flared. "You're defending her? Over your own daughter?" "I'm defending someone who hasn't forgotten what it means to try," he said, "something you clearly have." The silence that followed was thick and raw. Melissa turned on her heel. "She's done here. If I see her on this court again, she's fired." She stormed off, Darcy trailing behind. Jasmine stood motionless, fists clenched at her sides. "I'm sorry," she said finally, her voice cracking. "I didn't mean to cause—" Tom cut her off. "No, you don't apologize for chasing what's yours." "But this is her house." "No," he said, "this is my house. I just let her play hostess." He reached into his bag and pulled out a worn envelope. Inside was a folded slip of paper, an invitation to a tryout event with the Illinois Regional Amateur Tennis Association. Date, time, address, in 3 weeks. "I made the call," he said. "They want to see you play." Jasmine stared at the paper like it was a map to another world. "I can't afford to lose this job," she whispered. "Then don't lose it. Quit when you're ready." "I need the income, the room, the—" "You need to stop shrinking to fit spaces that were never meant for you." His voice was gentler now, but there was no mistaking the command in it. "I'm not going to let you rot in this house just because they gave you a uniform and a paycheck." She looked down at her hands, at the calluses and cracked nails. They looked nothing like the hands of the girls on the posters she once plastered on her bedroom walls, but they felt stronger than ever. "Do you really think I have a chance?" Tom nodded. "You got a foot in the door, now kick it open." That night, Jasmine didn't sleep. She lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling, the invitation clutched in her hand. Fear pressed in from every side. She had no sponsor, no coach the league would recognize, No pristine resume or glowing recommendations. Just a court, an old man, and a heart that had started to believe again. She remembered her mother's voice. "Don't let the world decide who you are, Jazzy. You show them." The next morning, Jasmine packed her things. She didn't tell Melissa. Didn't leave a note. She left the keys on the kitchen counter and walked out the front door with her duffel over her shoulder and a tennis racket in her hand. She spent the next 3 weeks sleeping on a pull-out couch in Mrs. Langston's apartment, the retired nurse who had once cared for Tom and now, inexplicably, cared for her too. Jasmine trained in public parks, dodging soccer balls and strollers. She ran drills on cracked concrete, practiced serves against graffiti-tagged walls. Tom called every night with strategies and pep talks. Some days he sounded strong, others confused. One afternoon, Jasmine returned from practice to find Mrs. Langston waiting at the door. "You've got a visitor," she said. Inside, sitting in a floral armchair with a notebook in his lap, was a tall man in a polo shirt bearing the Irata logo. "You're Jasmine Miller?" he asked. "Yes." "I'm Don Keller. I run the selection committee." Jasmine's heart stopped. "Tom said—" "Yeah, I know Tom. We go way back." He stood and handed her an official application. "You're in. Show up, be ready, and wear something decent. First impressions count." She nodded, too stunned to speak. He paused at the door. "Tom believes in you. That means something." After he left, Jasmine sat down slowly, the application in her lap. The weight of it was heavier than she expected, not from doubt, but from the sheer reality of it. It was happening. She wasn't a maid anymore. She was a contender. The stadium wasn't grand, nothing like the polished courts of televised matches, but to Jasmine, it may as well have been Wimbledon. The Illinois Regional Amateur Tennis Association's complex was tucked behind a YMCA in Evanston, a modest building wrapped in banners and hope. On the morning of the tryouts, the courts buzzed with life. Players stretching, coaches shouting, the slap of shoes against painted concrete, the zing of rackets cut in air. Jasmine stood near the registration table, arms tight across her chest, eyes flicking nervously across the crowd. Everyone looked younger, sharper, confident. They had sleek bags, branded gear, team jackets with embroidered initials. Some were flanked by parents or personal coaches who murmured encouragements or strategy. She had none of that. Just her worn duffel, a plain white tee, navy shorts, and the cheapest tennis shoes she could find at a discount outlet. Her racket, though freshly restrung by Tom's old friend at a sports shop, still bore the nicks and scuffs of years spent in storage. The contrast was staggering. But she had one thing no one else there did. She had clawed her way out of someone else's shadow. The woman behind the table scanned Jasmine's application, then looked up skeptically. "You're 30? Jasmine nodded. "You're applying for the Development League?" "Yes." The woman hesitated, then stamped the paper and handed her a number. "Court 6, warm-ups in 10. Jasmine took the badge and moved toward the courts. She could feel the stares, the side glances. One girl, tall and blonde with a glittery visor and matching skirt, leaned toward a teammate and whispered something. They both laughed. Jasmine ignored them. She had learned how to survive ridicule a long time ago. The court itself was decent. No cracks, firm net, a breeze slicing lightly across the service boxes. Jasmine stretched methodically, rotating her shoulders, shaking out her wrists, hopping lightly on her toes. It was a ritual now, drilled into her by Tom. "Think of the court like a room you built yourself," he had said the night before on the phone. "Don't let anyone make you feel like a guest." A whistle blew. Warm-up started. Her first opponent was a college sophomore named Lydia Jameson. Jasmine knew this because the girl's coach kept shouting her full name every 3 minutes. "Bend your knees, Lydia Jameson. Follow through, Lydia Jameson." Jasmine tuned it out. The first rally was shaky. Jasmine's serve barely cleared the net. She gritted her teeth and recalibrated. The second was better. The third, crisp and deep, forcing Lydia to stumble. Each point after that peeled away more of Jasmine's hesitation. She stopped looking at the other players. She stopped wondering if she belonged. She focused only on the ball, the angle, the bounce, the rhythm. Her body, honed by weeks of punishing repetition, moved like a machine. Serve, shift, backhand, lunge, pivot, slice. By the end of the set, she had won 6-4. Lydia didn't shake her hand after. Her second match was harder. The girl had power, blistering serves, and sharp angles. Jasmine had to work for every point. She slipped once on a wide return and scraped her elbow, but didn't call time. She wiped the blood with her shirt and played on. In the final rally, she drew her opponent forward with a short slice, then lobbed high and deep over her head. The girl chased, missed. Jasmine collapsed onto her knees. She had won again. By noon, the first round of matches ended, and names began appearing on the chalkboard by the main court. Those who advanced to the final evaluation were circled in blue. Jasmine waited silently among the other players, hands behind her back, one name at a time. Then she saw it. #62. Jasmine Miller. Her breath caught. She had made it. "Is that her?" a voice said behind her. Jasmine turned. It was the blonde girl from earlier, the one with the glitter visor. "I heard she's like a janitor or something." "She's 30, another added. "That's like prehistoric for this league." Jasmine didn't respond. She walked away, holding her number tighter in her fist. She found a bench near the far side of the building and sat down. She was dizzy, not from exhaustion, but from the storm of emotion inside her. She had come expecting to be laughed at, dismissed. Instead, she was standing shoulder to shoulder with girls who had never scrubbed someone else's bathroom in their lives. Her phone buzzed. A message from Mrs. Langston. "Tom said to tell you he's watching from the rehab center. He made the nurse put it on the old TV. He said, 'Tell my girl she's got this.'" Tears sprang to her eyes before she could stop them. She wiped them away quickly and stood. Final evaluations began after a short break. Each player was given one match against a seeded opponent, a member of last year's winning team. Jasmine's draw was bad luck or maybe a test. She was set against Andrea Reyes, the reigning MVP of the previous season. Tall, fast, surgical. Everyone knew her name. Jasmine was handed a fresh match ball by the ref and stepped onto court 1. Her heart pounded. Tom's voice echoed in her memory. "She's faster. She's younger. So what? You've been fighting real life. She's only fought tennis." The match began. Andrea's serve was a rocket. Jasmine barely caught it with her racket edge. She lost the first game in under 2 minutes. The crowd around the court was silent. She took a breath. Second game. Jasmine served. She went for precision, not power. She played long rallies, made Andrea run. She returned slice with slice, countered force with control. She won that game. The score climbed, 1-1, 2-2, 3-3. Andrea started grunting with effort. Jasmine's shirt clung to her skin. Her legs ached, but she moved like a shadow, fluid, determined. In the 7th game, Jasmine executed a perfect drop shot. Andrea reached it barely, but sent the ball into the net. Applause erupted. She could hear someone say, Who is she?" At 5-4, Andrea broke her serve again. They were tied. One more game. Jasmine wiped her palms on her shorts and walked to the baseline. Final game. Andrea served hard. Jasmine returned. Rally. Another. 12 strokes. 15. Then Jasmine saw it. Andrea's left foot faltered. Her swing overreached. Jasmine sent a backhand deep to the corner. Andrea missed. Match. Jasmine stood, heart pounding, knees weak, as silence stretched. Then came the claps, not polite, real, earning claps. The head scout, a gray-haired man in a windbreaker, stepped forward. "You have a hell of a sense for the court," he said. "Where'd you train?" Jasmine looked him in the eye. "Backyards," she said, "and someone who believed in me." He smiled. "We'll be in touch." She walked away, her legs shaking, but her spirit soaring. Not because she won, but because she had proven to herself she could stand among them. She had earned her place. The training facility in the northwest suburbs was colder than Jasmine expected, its concrete walls stained with the kind of wear only time and ambition could leave behind. The air inside reeked of sweat, old tennis balls, and floor polish. There were no luxury amenities, no sparkling locker rooms, no quiet lounges with cucumber water. This was a place for athletes who knew pain, who came to push until their lungs begged and their muscles betrayed them. And Jasmine was one of them now. She had been accepted into the training camp, barely. The email arrived 2 days after her final match against Andrea Reyes. She had read it 3 times to believe it. The program lasted 3 weeks, culminating in final selections for placement into the league. Only the top 5 women would be drafted to compete. The rest would be cut. She packed light, 3 shirts, 2 pairs of shorts, and her single racket. She couldn't afford new shoes. She stitched the soles of her old ones with dental floss and glue. Mrs. Langston handed her a $50 bill on the way out. "For protein," she said, pushing it into Jasmine's palm like it was a family heirloom. Jasmine arrived early, standing in front of the facility before sunrise with her duffel slung over one shoulder. She expected to feel out of place. But the moment she stepped inside, she realized this place wasn't designed to comfort anyone. No one smiled. No one greeted her. Everyone was here to prove something. Day 1 began with fitness testing, shuttle sprints, wall sits, jump ropes. Jasmine stumbled, gasping for air, her legs sluggish. The others, mostly college-aged, sculpted by years of training, snickered when she dropped the rope during a speed test. "She's going to break a hip," one girl muttered, not even bothering to whisper. Jasmine said nothing. She finished last in 3 of the 5 tests, but she finished. That night, she collapsed on the cot in the shared dormitory. Her bunkmate, a laconic girl named Suki from New York, tossed a protein bar onto Jasmine's bed without a word. Jasmine nodded in thanks. The days blurred into each other, long, brutal sessions of drills, tactical breakdowns, endless matches. The coaches rarely addressed her directly. When they did, it was with the same doubt she had come to recognize: polite dismissal. "She's slow. Too stiff. Where's the upside?" She took every word like a stone and stacked them, silently, into fuel. Tom called when he could. His voice was weaker now, thinner. Sometimes he forgot where she was, asking if she'd remembered to bring his medication. Other times he was clear-eyed, lucid. "You're going to be better than I ever was," he said once, "but only if you stop caring what they think and focus on the court." In the second week, Jasmine was assigned a one-on-one match with the program's top recruit, Sophia Brighton, a 19-year-old prodigy with a scholarship to UCLA and a swing like a whip. Sophia was quick, confident, and cruel. The first set, she obliterated Jasmine 6-1. Each point was followed by a smirk, a glance at the coach's bench. "She's toast," Sophia said loudly after returning a serve. "Maybe someone should call the retirement home." The laughter stung more than the loss. Jasmine walked off the court that day and sat on the floor of the locker room until everyone else had left. Her hands trembled. Her throat burned. She hadn't cried since leaving the Gentry estate, but now the tears came hot and fast, smudging the sweat on her cheeks. What was she doing here? She was a maid, a dropout, a woman clinging to something that had passed her by a decade ago. She called Tom. The nurse answered. "He's not doing so well today," she said. "He's sleeping." Jasmine almost hung up. But then she remembered the look on his face the day she beat Andrea. The pride, the fire. She stared at herself in the locker room mirror. Her skin was blotchy, her hair matted, her eyes looked tired, but alive. You've been fighting real life, she's only fought tennis. She stood up. The next day, she walked onto the court with a different energy. She stopped apologizing with her posture. She stopped shrinking. She didn't try to beat Sophia with speed. She beat her with vision. She anticipated, redirected, broke pace. She lost the first set, 7-5, but she won the second, 6-4. And the third, it came down to a final deuce. Sophia charged the net. Jasmine feinted left, and then she hit a soft, floating lob that landed just inside the baseline. Sophia didn't reach it. Silence. Then applause. Even the coaches stood. After the match, Sophia passed her on the way to the locker room. She didn't smile, didn't offer congratulations, but she didn't make a joke either. That night, Jasmine found a note in her locker. "I was wrong about you." S. The final week was different. She was no longer the joke. She was a threat. The drills got harder, the pressure sharper. But she thrived in it. She started waking before sunrise to run laps around the facility. She studied game film during dinner. She wrote her serves into a notebook, each speed, each angle. She didn't just train. She prepared for war. The night before final selections, Tom called. He was lucid, barely, but present. "I saw the footage," he said. "You moved like you weren't afraid anymore." "I'm not." "Good. Then go show them what regret looks like when it grows a spine." "I will." He was quiet for a moment, then, "Whatever happens tomorrow, you already did the impossible." "Not yet," she whispered, "but almost." The arena buzzed with electricity, the hum of anticipation hanging in the air like the charge before a storm. It wasn't a packed stadium or a primetime broadcast, but for Jasmine, it was everything. The Illinois Regional Amateur Tennis Association's opening match of the season had drawn a modest crowd. Families, scouts, sponsors, and young hopefuls clinging to the chain-link fences with wide eyes. But in the center of it all was a polished court bathed in halogen light. And for the first time in her life, Jasmine Miller's name was on the match card. She stood behind the locker room door in her team uniform, a crisp white polo with navy trim, matching skirt, and her name stitched into the collar. The clothes didn't feel like a costume anymore. They fit her, earned, not borrowed. A clipboard-toting coordinator peeked into the hallway. "Miller, you're up in 15. You're on court 3. Jasmine nodded, gripping the handle of her racket. She could hear the muffled crowd, the bounce of tennis balls, the occasional sharp clap of applause. It all felt dreamlike, too large and too fragile, like a glass world she had to step into carefully. Mrs. Langston's text buzzed on her phone. "He's watching. Don't worry how, just play." She didn't need to ask who. Tom. He had been transferred to hospice 3 days ago. The doctors had said, "It won't be long." But somehow she knew he would hold on for this. One last match. One last glimpse of the player he'd helped shape from dust and memory. She stepped outside into the golden light. The crowd wasn't massive, but when she emerged from the tunnel, a ripple of attention passed through it. People noticed. Some pointed. One of the commentators whispered to his co-host, "There she is, Jasmine Miller, you know, the one with the story." She wasn't sure what the story was anymore. The maid-to-athlete tale, the comeback narrative, the underdog fable. None of it mattered now. She was here. She had the racket. The court was hers. Her opponent, a seeded player named Kendall Reese, waited on the other side of the net. Blonde, tall, with a backhand like a hammer. Jasmine had seen clips. She was aggressive, fast, and favored a high-risk game. Perfect storm. They shook hands at the net. Kendall offered a tight smile. "Good luck," Jasmine said. "You'll need it," Kendall replied coolly. The umpire called the toss. Jasmine won. She chose to serve. She walked to the baseline and bounced the ball once, twice. Her fingers were steady, her breath calm. She looked up at the sky, soft blue and endless. Then she tossed the ball and served. It was clean, fast, hit the inside edge of the service box and skidded away. Ace. Applause. She didn't look at the crowd. She didn't look at the umpire. She looked at the court, her space, her temple. The next point was a rally. Kendall responded with brutal force, sending balls to the far corners, trying to drag Jasmine wide. But Jasmine's movement was precise. She didn't waste steps. She absorbed the pressure and returned it, building momentum. When Kendall hit long after an extended rally, Jasmine clenched her fist. 15-love. She took the first game, then the second. Kendall came back strong in the third with a dominant serve, but Jasmine didn't crack. She kept her composure, adjusting her stance, changing her pace. By the middle of the first set, the audience had shifted. No longer a novelty, Jasmine was becoming the one to watch. Commentators murmured into microphones. "She's composed, a little unconventional, but calculated. 30 years old and covering ground like a 20-year-old. Look at that split step. She's not just here for the story, she's here to win." At 5-4, Jasmine served for the set. Her first serve was a fault. Too long. She stepped back, adjusted her grip, took a breath. Second serve. It landed perfectly. Kendall returned with a blistering cross-court forehand. Jasmine met it with a backhand slice. The ball barely cleared the net, forcing Kendall to lunge. Jasmine rushed the net, anticipating the weak reply. Kendall panicked, sent the ball wide. Set, 6-4. The crowd erupted. Jasmine walked to her bench, towel over her shoulder, breathing slow and deep. She didn't smile. Not yet. The match wasn't over, but something inside her had shifted. This wasn't survival anymore. This was arrival. The second set began with fire. Kendall adjusted her game, leaning into more aggressive play. She slammed serves at 110 miles per hour. She charged the net. She yelled after every winner. Jasmine didn't match her theatrics. She matched her focus. They traded games. 1-1, 2-2, 3-3. At 4-4, Jasmine found herself in the longest rally of the match. 26 strokes, zigzagging from corner to corner. Sweat poured down her back. Her calves screamed, but she held. And then Kendall stumbled. Her foot caught mid-pivot. She overhit. Jasmine won the point. 5-4. One game away. She stood at the baseline, tossed the ball, served. Fault. She reset. Second serve. Safe. Rally. Long. Exhausting. At 30-30, everything hinged on the next 2 points. Kendall served hard to Jasmine's backhand. Jasmine absorbed the pace and redirected it down the line. 40-30. Match point. The crowd hushed. She bounced the ball once, twice, then tossed it, swinging cleanly. The serve landed wide, pulling Kendall off the court. Jasmine rushed forward. Kendall scrambled and barely got a racket on the ball. It floated back weakly mid-court. Jasmine didn't think. She stepped into the shot and slammed a forehand down the line. Winner, match. She stood in silence, racket raised as applause rolled over her. She didn't jump. She didn't scream. She looked up beyond the stands, beyond the lights, and whispered, "We did it, Tom." In a hospice room across town, a nurse turned up the volume on the tiny television. Tom's hand, weak and trembling, lifted slightly. His lips parted into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "She's a player," he whispered. And for the first time in his long, fading life, he saw a dream not his own come true, because he had dared to believe in someone when no one else did. Jasmine walked off the court to a new name, a new path, and a future that finally felt like it belonged to her. She was no longer a woman who used to dream. She was the woman who became the dream. Subscribe for more stories like this. Watch the next one. And if this moved you, share it.